Welcome, everybody, to Catfish Weekly, along with Chad Fields. I'm Lyle Stokes. Chad, we've been building up for this for a long time. We had a little mishap last week, but we got the man, Mark Davis, on with us tonight. And we'll get to him in just a few minutes, as you and I have been visiting with him backstage here for a little bit. And awesome dude, isn't he?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I was actually sitting back here like, okay, I don't want to stop you, but we
gotta go.
I'm sitting here like this the whole time, but we gotta get her started and say hello to all of our friends.
We do. Why don't you take off with that, buddy?
I will. The non-favorite son I see in here first. That's Mark from Catfish and Crappie, followed by his brother-in-law, avid fisherman, Mike Irvin. Catfish and Fever and Outdoors. What's going on, Lynn? We got Miss Chrissy Brown. Big Skip Fishing. My beautiful and wonderful wife, Dee. That was some extra suck up, just so you know.
Yeah.
Got to get it in there. We got Carmel Muncie. Brian B. Catfishing, 351 Cleveland. Scroll down here a little bit. John Patrick Jr., Gula Cat. Sherman Tomlinson, Don R. Said Carmel, Laughing Cat Fishing. What's up, Thomas? Cat Life Outdoors. What's that?
We got Brad Beck's in there.
What's going on, Brad? Got David Smith and Annette Morgan. I bet Chucky is around there somewhere.
I bet you're right.
We got Matt from Wannabe Outdoors, Freddie's Outdoor Adventures, Creole Catfishing, Indiana Chris. Yep, there's Chucky. Let's scroll down here. Mike Sampson. We'll switch over here, Mr. Lyle, real quick. And look at the participants, see if we can make this a little quicker. We've got Angler of the Ville, Annette Morgan. You said Brad Becks. Chasing the Outdoors. We've got the lovely, most wonderful Missourian that probably ever lived, Miss Cindy Stokes.
You're sucking up.
I do. Well, my brothers have put me in a bad light with the Missourians.
Yes,
we got Dale Hayslip, Dallas Liebert, Fishing and Freedom, Kevin Baker, Nuts and Bolts, Jason Lamb, El Catfish Grande. I love that name.
Yeah.
We got Muskrat Adventures, and Nebraska Kayak Anglers Club has joined us. My arch nemesis for this coming weekend, Parker Pursuits. We got Patriot Catfishers of America. Good evening, James. We got Loudmouth Curtis. Troy from Real and Virtual Outdoors. Setting Hooks and Crossing Eyes. Sean Abney. Surf Fins Catfishing. Solo Texan Adventures. Tim Lude, my buddy Tim Molina, Trophy Seekers Outdoors.
Dieter Melhorn just joined in.
What's up, Dieter? Scrolling back up through here, I'm caught up.
I've got a couple announcements here. The Indiana Catfish Association, I got the results from their past weekend tournament sent to me by Brad Becks. First place was Adam Denier and Hill Stamper. 67.30 pounds. Second place is Corey Peterson and Travis Yost, 41.96 pounds. Third was Jack Arnold and Jason Lehman, 40.44. Fourth, Terry Holden and Mary Jane Woods, 40.16. And fifth, Nick Haig, Miguel, and Cyril Gabriel Cesar, 28.10. That was the results on that. And then I have the Nebraska Kayak Anglers Club is going to be holding a series of tournaments this year. You can contact them. They're going to have out of Northeast Nebraska, and they're going to have 5 specific tournaments. That is the biggest fish that you can catch. So contact Nebraska Kayak Anglers Club if you're interested in that or in that area, and they will hook you up with that information.
Did you get in on that?
No, me and kayaks don't get along, kind of like canoes, ice fishing. I don't do any of that. You know better. I do have one other thing. Our good friend Keith Smart, he is having some more problems, and I think that they've called hospice in him, so please keep your thoughts and prayers for Keith and his family. Keith is a guy that watches all of our shows every week, whether he's in the hospital or whether he's at home, whether he feels good or he feels bad. He's been a great friend to a whole bunch of us in this community. So please keep him in your thoughts and prayers, because we need guys like Keith, and right now he needs what we can give him. So please keep that in mind. And any other announcements, Chad?
I do not believe we have any other than make sure you tune in to Catfish and Crappie after this for week one. Well, half of the week one updates.
Week one.
We will be talking about the following weekend as well. So
that's correct. Now, are we ready?
We are so ready.
Mark Davis, thank you so much for coming on Catfish Weekly. It means the world to me.
I apologize for messing up last time. That wasn't crossed wires. That wasn't anything other than a flat out screw up on my part. And
we
I want to apologize to you for not getting it done, and I'm glad to be here to get it done.
Well, we've been working at this for a few years, trying to get together with this, and you would be busy or I'd have something going on. And,
yes, sir.
And this is such an important topic that I knew you was the perfect person for this if we could ever make it happen. And we finally got it together, and it's going to be a great show. And once we get done talking about that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about BigWater Adventures.
I'll be glad to. You tee up where you want the ball to go, and I'll hit it to the best of my ability. I promise you.
Well, why don't you tell us how we got started with the skin cancer deal first, and tell how you got involved with that.
Well, so I had growing up, in the 80s, I graduated from high school in the mid 80s. And when we were, in our teens and up through middle school and high school, laying out was a popular phrase, and that would encompass as little clothing as was legally allowed back then, and usually some type of sunblock like Hawaiian Tropic Gold Label, or if you couldn't afford the coconut smell, possibly baby oil. So it was not exactly what you would call skin cancer awareness period in our life history. And a lot of us spent a lot of time in the sun. I mean, when I went fishing growing up, which was pretty much every second chance I got, I was shirtless. If I was playing sports, I was shirtless. Whatever we were doing, if we had to put on a shirt, we would. But shirts and skins was the typical teams in any type of sport that you would play. So I had lots of exposure to the sun, and I was aware of the word dermatologist, but I had never been to one. So fast forward, go on through the career, and I got to BigWater Adventures circa 2007-ish, which was about 16 years ago, and I still had not been to a dermatologist. And I started to notice about 5 years in that I had this just kind of like a little bitty scab right here. Actually, it was a little further down. It was about right here. And if I'd pick it off or mess with it, it'd come back. And my wife's a nurse, and early on she said, that is probably a skin cancer. You need to go to a dermatologist. Well, at the time I was even bigger. I'm 52, 53 years old now, but that was about, my mid 30s, and I was as bulletproof as you could get. So I didn't need to go to a dermatologist. And I've lived 35 years of my life, and I haven't gone to one, and I'm fine. Thank you very much. So year later, it got to be a little bit bigger, and go by another year, and it started looking almost like a little cigarette burn. And then I started thinking, there's kind of something here. I probably should listen to my wife. And 3 years after that, her initial, you should go to a dermatologist, I went. So I sat down, and he took one look at it, Dr. Greta Zimmerman at Columbia Skincare Clinic, took one look at it and called in Dr. Chow, who is her associate. And he said, let's schedule him for Friday. And I'm looking around thinking, we going to lunch. What are we going to do? He said, you're going to have a Moe's surgery. And I'm thinking Larry, Moe and Curly, or Moe's Tavern from The Simpsons, or Moe's Mexican restaurant. Incorrect across the board. It's MOH''S. So I went home, and I I might have looked it up one time to see what it is, and it's what you do if you have, skin cancer situation. So cancer kind of scared me a little bit. I looked a little further and saw that 99% of it's treatable, and you can do what you need to do to get rid of it. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna go in on Friday and get rid of it. So I went in, I sat down, and Dr. Chow, who had actually, Dr. Zimmerman and Dr. Chow were both retired military. And Dr. Chow said, we're going to go in and we're going to make this first cut. And he explained it to me. He said, he used two analogies. He said, one of them's kind of like a pine tree. If you've got a big, base of a pine tree and you cut it off at the ground, you've got a big root system. You got a little tiny sapling of a pine tree and you cut it off at the ground, you got a little root system. You have a big root system. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this thing like a vein of minerals. We're going to go in and we're going to cut a grid. And then we're going to freeze that grid, cut it into quadrants. And if the mineral goes this way, we're going to follow it this way. And if the mineral goes this way, we're going to follow it this way. And if there's none up here, then we're going to clear that and we're going to follow it where it goes. And if it goes deeper, we're going to cut again. And then we're going to cut again. And we'll do that until we've gone through all the minerals, which you would know as a skin cancer. So I said, okay, well, that sounds good. How long is this going to take? And he just kind of smiled and he says, I have no idea. So they cut me the first time. They put me in the room and I sat with this thing on my face like this with 5 other people with things on their face. And the guy that I had come in with had a thing on his nose. So he was looking at me through both sides of the bandage. That'll be important in a minute. Well, that was all said and done. I went back in second time, back in third time, back in fourth time, and they finally got it all taken care of. Now, I'm completely numb on the entire right side of my face, and I've got this thing that I'm holding on there, so I've not seen it, don't know anything about it, nothing. We go back in there, and Dr. Chow said, would you like to see this before we sew you up? Sure. He pulls that thing off, puts a mirror up there, and I look like something out of Night of the Living Dead. Without getting too graphic, it looked like somebody taken a melon ball scooper about an inch wide and gone all the way from my cheek all the way down to my jaw and completely to the bone. I could see it. And I said, oh my gosh. He said, well, it's worse than it looks, or it's not as bad as it looks. He said, and that was not a slight. That's exactly what he said. He said, we can pull it over. And he says, you'll have kind of like a skin tuck. And he said, the only bad thing is when you get to be about 60, you'll have to have the other side done because one side's going to look, the other side's going to sag. So he said, we'll get it all stitched up. I said, well, that's good because I've got a film on Monday. And he just looked at me. He said, what do you mean you got to film Monday? I said, yeah, I'm going to film BigWater Adventures on Monday. And he said, what's BigWater Adventures? And I said, exactly. So I explained to him what BigWater Adventures was. And he said, you're not going to do that on Monday. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, all right. He said, that's fine. He said, I'm going to sew you up to where somebody could hit you in the side of the face with a baseball bat and not bust some stitches open. I said, fair enough. So he got me sewn up, got everything taken care of, and I went about my merry way. And that show's actually, that's one for the vault for you. I think it was season 4, season 5. And it's the only time that I was registered and legally on drugs on BigWater Adventures. So I was sitting there catching Goliath groupers at the phosphate docks and talking to the seagulls and seeing all kinds of pretty clouds, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky, but we got the show done. I got everything taken care of, and I had this big bandage on the side of my face. You'll know which season it is because I had a bandage on the side of my face for the entire thing. Once it was all said and done, I went back in and, to get the stitches removed, and it was a big, long process. It took me 3 or 4 months to heal. And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, this is kind of crazy. I think there's probably a lot of people that have no idea, just like I did, this exists. And so I went back in, and consequently, I actually had to have another Mohs surgery about 6 months later. But prior to that, I asked Dr. Chow, I said, look, I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I'm a saltwater captain. I'm all the reasons that people don't come in to a dermatologist because they don't need to, because they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. What can I do to help? He said, well, you're the perfect person to talk about this. He said, if you ever talk to people, he said, I want you to get across that, you got to wear your sunblock. And I said, okay, what do I need to say? He says, well, I want you to apply your sunblock. And he said, you got to do it liberally and often. I said, okay, cool. He said, and you need to come and see a dermatologist at least once a year. He said, 2 times a year if you've had issues with skin cancer in the past, but at least once a year. I said, check. And he said, people are going to have questions. He said, send them to skincancer.org. I said, all right, so let me get this straight. Apply your sunblock liberally and often. Go see your dermatologist at least once a year, twice if you've had issues with skin cancer, and go to skincancer.org if you have any questions. He said, man, that'd be perfect. I said, well, you just gave me the PSA that I'm going to say at the end of the show. And that has been said at the end of every show of BigWater Adventures since. And it's reached millions and millions and millions of households. And I have probably, I don't even know how many, I'm sure well into the hundreds and thousands of people that have contacted me telling me everything from you sent me to the dermatologist for the first time to thank you for the heads up. Appreciate the reminder. I got to have a Mohs surgery. What does that mean? What kind of sunblock do you wear? Every single question you could possibly get, to where I had to, quite frankly, study up on squamous cells and basal cells and melanomas and all the different things with skin cancer, not to give people medical advice, but just to give them an idea of what in the world they should do, what is going on, what can you look forward to, and, how can you prevent these things? And it's kind of funny because when I started it, it was almost like, moonwalking, out on or walking on Mars, for lack of a better way of putting it. There really wasn't that much awareness out there. There wasn't. Now it's getting a lot more so. I mean, you're seeing all the bass guys doing, all the tournament guys, catfish guys, you see them wearing buffs, people are paying attention to it. And, it's become, I don't want to say a thing, but it's definitely become an issue to where it is addressed just like any other type of gear that you've got. You got to figure out, how am I going to keep myself from getting fried when I go out in the sun, especially the older you get, because most of the damage is done before you're 25 years old. And then those cells start to metastasize and the cancers start to grow when your immune system starts to get a little weaker, or if you trigger it with a real bad sunburn. I mean, there's a lot of things that can cause it. Even getting sick and having your immune system going down for a period of time can cause these cells to start, becoming cancerous. So that's really what got me, I thought, man, if there's one thing in the world that I'm in the position to do, based on my experience and based on, I meet, hundreds and thousands of people that are just like me, that are, 30, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and have never been to a dermatologist once. And they'll come up to me and they'll literally go, hey man, you see this right here? Does this look like something I should go get checked out? You need to go get that checked out.
I wish I had that problem.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Exactly. I mean, I can't tell you just randomly. I'll have people walk by me in a gas station and say, hey, man, I applied my sunblock literally and often. Or I'll have somebody walk up to me and go, hey, man, look at this right here. Can you see this mark right here? And I'm like, dude, I highly recommend you get that checked out. Does it look like something? No, I just recommend you get it checked out.
I'm not a doctor.
No, I'm not a doctor. I understand that PSA may make me sound like one, but that was actually written by a doctor. So that's how it all got going. And I mean, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody that wants to talk about it and give them, suggestions on the stock basic things you do to try to prevent it, the things you can do to try to, if you got to go in and have something done. There's a lot more information out there now on different types of, like I said, my dermatologist, I call her Dr. Pinch and Stick, because every time I see her, she's pinching and sticking and cutting and, burning and freezing. And I'm sure she's a perfectly lovely lady in a social environment, but every time I see her, she cuts me, pinches me, burns me, and sticks me.
Yep. I think I watched you from the beginning of when you done BigWater Adventures. I'm pretty sure I did, because back in those days, when Cindy would say, hey, we're going to get a package from this internet provider or that provider for the TV, I'd say there's a couple of, they got to have the St. Louis Cardinals games on, and they got to have the outdoor channel on. If they got that, you do what you need to do.
Right.
The instant you started doing them, I was hooked, like tons of other people are. But when you started the deal with talking about the skin cancer stuff, it caught me, and I'm pretty sure I messaged you right off the bat, right after that, and thought it was so good about you doing that. And then it was a few years later, then Cindy had some. And I told you about that, and you was there just like a friend should be. And we talked about getting you on show. Just one thing after another. You was busy, I was busy. Things happened, and it didn't work out for several different times. And she's had it a couple of times, and I watch it for her. I had a little spot that was not that on me, but I was aware of it enough that if it hadn't been for you, I'd have probably just blowed that off.
Right.
You know what? I wouldn't know the difference, but I have took that to heart, and I think it's not just me. There's a lot of people that watch what you do and say, "Hey, man, this guy went through it. He's telling us to be careful," and I think we should be careful. And I believe that. I think that everybody that has anything abnormal, it only takes a minute to run by a doctor and have them say yes or no, and you're out of there.
Well, once you get on, you get started with it. The first time is always going to be the worst time, because especially if you haven't been to it before. I mean, it's not uncommon to go in for the very first time and have them find a whole bunch of different stuff to where they, most of it may be minor. Some of it, they might have one or two Mohs surgeries. There's all kinds of stuff you have to do. The guy that was sitting with me in the waiting room, he ended up, and it was Dr. Chow made it a point to show that to me, because he ended up pretty much losing his nose. I mean, all of his nose.
Oh, wow.
But the crazy thing about it was he ended up, Dr. Chow is a plastic surgeon as well. And he showed me a picture of the guy the next time, that I came in, and he's like, yeah, we grafted this from here and got this from here, and we put it back together. And I mean, the guy had a new nose. I mean, they got the cancer out, and he had a melanoma that was, quite frankly, fairly radical and probably would have killed him. And he ended up, getting a completely, I don't know what parts of the body they took it from, but Dr. Chow said, you remember the guy when he came in? He showed him to me like, 6 months later. He goes, he looks different, but he looks pretty good, doesn't he? And I'm like, yeah, for the guy that just lost his nose, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, when we were talking, before we went live, and I was kind of talking about when I was little and being fair skinned and stuff. But what you just said rings a bell with like my nose and stuff. That was the one place I always look at every year, because it would get so pink and stuff from the burns that I got when I was younger. Now you got me freaked out.
Yeah, and I mean, the different parts of your face have different tolerances for sun. I mean, I get really bad. I've had a bunch of them right up in my temples, which is crazy, because if you think about wearing sunglasses and wearing the visor and all that stuff,
yeah.
But when you're on the water, the problem is you've got that magnification. You've got a big reflector plate out in front of you. And, it's even worse when it's flat calm. You think it's bad enough, but it's even worse when you've got any kind of waves, because now you've got all those fronts. Any ripple on the water is just a bunch of different mirrors pointing different directions. So you've got so much of that refraction coming on and reflection coming off that water, that even if you've got, glasses on and you've got pretty much everything you think would be covered, you got it coming up from underneath, you've got it coming from the sides, from the top. Being out in the sun will flat out get you over time. It just will. And, there's things we can do to help keep it from getting through. But when it does, that's why you go see the dermatologist.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Now, folks, if you have a question for Mark about this, please put it in chat. But bear in mind that he is not a doctor. He just helping them get the word out. He can't answer your doctrine type questions. If you need to see a doctor, please do that. But because we want to talk about BigWater Adventures here for a little while, because we got Mark and Catfish and Crappie podcast coming on after us, and I've looked forward to having Mark Davis on our show for so long. I don't want to do anything to where he won't come back at some point.
No.
This is the most important show I think that we've ever had in the 7 years that we've been doing Catfish Weekly. I think this is probably the most important one that will affect the most amount of people.
It's not sunburn related, but have you ever lost a cell phone to the depths?
Man, I've watched. I can honestly tell you how different phones act in the water as they're what kind of action they've got when they're going down. I've done it. I can tell you I've seen it done to my detriment. I've probably done it too many times, but I've seen it done way more times than yes, I have. I just wish they could at least get the signal out, like on that episode of The Office, where you can see him as he's going down and it's blinking out to where, at least it
That'd be awesome.
So the protection products, so I've got no affiliation. I've actually had some opportunities to, for lack of a better way of putting it, have the PSA sponsored, which I won't do. It's a public service announcement for a reason. But the product that I've got, if you look it up on the internet, it's spelled ISDIN. It's called ISDIN. And there's several reasons for it. My dermatologist actually turned me on to that. You get it. I think it comes out of it's out of someplace overseas, Switzerland or Sweden or someplace. But it actually has the active. It's I'll say it wrong. It's uraphenecta actinic something. But when they do this, the skin peels that they'll have you do, like typically, essentially what it does is it'll pull those cancer cells to the surface. Typically, they'll have you do it at the end of the year, and they put the cream on there and have you do it. It's got small trace amounts of that, and it's actually a lotion that you can put on. If you watch my show, you see me. I look like Frosty the Snowman most of the time because I don't really put it on like I really don't put it on like sunblock. I put it on like war paint. When my hair's still wet, I put my hair back, and then I literally I put it on in spots, and I just go down and put it on like war paint and let it dry. And it stays on. That particular stuff ISDIN stays on pretty much all day long. It doesn't, if it gets in you, it doesn't irritate your eyes. And it's something it comes off with soap and water, but that's about the only way that it'll come off. And it also conditions your skin, but it does have that active ingredient in it. You can look up. And it's those small trace amounts that literally cause the smaller surface areas of those skin cells, the cancer skin cells. It'll zap some of them. It's not a substitute for going to the dermatologist, and it will not prevent you from getting skin cancer, but it does help in the maintenance portion of it. And it's SPF, I think, 50, which there's a lot of information out there. There's, you're like, why don't you wear SPF, 30 or 50 or 100? Once you get to, a certain SPF, and some people will say it's 30 and some people will say it's 50, then you're getting into 120% humidity, which is called rain. Once you get over a certain saturation level, the sun, the bad UV rays can't go through it anyway. So, you're kind of getting into an overkill situation to where, could you make a 300 SPF? I imagine you could, but, about 250 of it you don't need. You'd be better off to just put on a ski mask and call it a day, which I do with 12 buffs. And I have that question, why don't you wear a buff? And the sad but simple answer is you wouldn't know who I am on television. So
I use the baby stuff because, like Chad, I'm fairly fair skinned and got burnt as a kid real bad. But I don't know that it's any better than the 30. But
as long as you're not getting burnt and you're good, I mean, it's, you got to listen. It's just like when they tell you when you're lifting weights, listen to your body. Well, when you're putting on sunblock, you're going to know the stuff that works, and you're going to know the stuff that you like. And you're going to, I mean, I've legitimately tried, a bunch of different types of skin block.
Oh, I'm sure.
Sunblock. But, actually Dr. Greta put the ISDIN on for me. Use a paint roller, funny but not funny. I pretty much do. My finger is pretty much a paint roller. If you watch the show, I mean, I used to try to hide it. I mean, 10 years ago, I tried to, rub it in, and I'd look at myself and is there too much here? Now I put that stuff on like war paint. I just don't care. I'm putting it on to keep the sun out. And if I put on too much, I would much rather have it on too much.
Absolutely. And look at the fish you're catching. Them fish don't care.
No. They really don't. I'm living proof that, if the fish is big enough, it doesn't matter who's holding it.
That's right. That's right. Them fish don't care if you got sunblock on or not. If they're going to bite your bait, you're going to get the chance or opportunity to catch them. And man,
yes, sir.
Over the years, you've caught some of the coolest fish I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, we with the show, my bar is every year. I mean, we COVID aside, when we could actually travel, we went from Alaska to Australia. We're still getting Panama in and Costa Rica in and a couple of others, but we've had to kill a few of them because of COVID, and we weren't able to get there. Just flat out weren't able to get there. We try to do between inshore and offshore. We're East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, inshore and offshore, and I have held 2 in 16 years that we're starting season 16. I've held to 50 plus species every year, individual species. Spray on sunblock, absolutely. The problem that I have, I'll use spray on sunblock sometimes if I'm in like an environment that is just absolutely roasting me, like if it's there's summertime in Panama and Costa Rica. But for me, I can put it on my neck, I can put it on the back of my neck, and if I've just gotten a haircut, don't ever forget the top of your head and the sides of your head and stuff like that. But for me, when I try to use any of those spray sunblocks, I always have problems because I sweat profusely when I'm out there. And if I get any of that stuff in my eye, I feel like somebody just hit me with hydrochloric acid.
Yep.
It absolutely does work. And it's great to put on areas, for me, typically speaking, if you take the face out of the equation, then yeah, I can use a spray for sure. Your hands, your legs, whatever you've got exposed, that it makes it easier than putting it on that way. But for my face, I start at the top and I literally just dab the stuff on and I just work my way down and I go real heavy on my nose, sometimes once, if not, or sometimes twice, if not 3 times. And then also don't forget to go real heavy right underneath your where your sunglasses hit, because you got to think about your face isn't completely flat. Your cheeks are turned out. So you're going to get hit the most because it's actually angled toward the sun instead of being completely flat. It's your cheekbones, and that's the reason you always get burned so much right through here.
We have a something that happens at our house because I forget to do a lot of things, and I have a very good reminding resource. As Cindy lays it out in the bathroom on the sink for me before I leave the house to put it on. Yep. And then, of course, she'll have some in the boat with us. But if you put it on before you leave, you're going to have some protection.
Yeah, and the other thing is as well, and this is anecdotal, 100% anecdotal, but it seems like to me, my personal experience, that if you'll put it on, if you're taking a shower in the morning, when you get out of the shower, as you're drying, if you'll put that stuff on, I personally think, your pores are open, just like they always tell you, if you're pretty much anything, if you want to clean your skin or whatever with open pores, a hot rag and stuff like that, or hot washcloth. It seems like for me personally, if I put that stuff on right out the shower first thing, and get my war paint on and get everything, it seems to stay on better throughout the day. And it feels like it's much more even, and I don't tend to burn or splotch or any places that I miss, especially right out of the shower like that. It just seems to work better.
Awesome. That's great advice right there. Great advice. Is there anything else that you can think of that we need to go over as far as the skin prevention stuff before we get on to BigWater Adventures?
Not really. I mean, the biggest thing is think of the 3 points. The 3 points that I say: apply your sunblock liberally and often. Go see your dermatologist at least once a year, more than once if you have had issues in the past, and go to skincancer.org if you have any questions, because basically that covers what you're supposed to do, what happens, to keep up your maintenance, and then where to go if you've got any questions about it. So skincancer.org is a great website, and they actually, if you get on Facebook, you can send them a message. And typically speaking, if you say, hey, I'm going to, or I need, or what does, they've got the links, they've got everything right there on hand, and they'll send it right to you.
I have awesome. I've seen another comment down here, and I actually was thinking about this a few minutes ago, but they make the shirts and stuff as well with the UV protection in them now as well, right? So the shirts and type shirts.
Right. You see me wear the same. I wear pretty much the same shirt every show. Well, not pretty much; they're identical. And I essentially, those have that high SPF on them. They're long sleeve. I actually have a little bit even longer sleeve because I like it when it kind of hangs. If that shirt will hang down over your knuckles when you're fishing, that'll help you with the gloves. And Nina's Kayak Crew, I'm not ignoring you. How did I get started fishing? You want me to go into that real quick?
Absolutely.
Well, like a lot of people, I grew up fishing pretty much as long as I can remember, I would go to I essentially would go to a lot of farm ponds and stuff. Grew up in the Midwest, did mostly freshwater. And little tidbit of information about me, I had never formally fished or spent any time around the ocean until I was 21 years old. I bass fished, I catfished. I grew up in just north of Indianapolis when you guys were talking about the Indiana Catfish tournament. I was thinking to myself, I wonder where they were fishing. I still go and spend my vacations on Raccoon Lake, which is where I grew up. Pretty much my grandfather had a trailer there, and grew up and fished that lake a ton. But I actually got started fishing, with my dad, with my grandpa, and just going out and hitting farm ponds. And you go from the brim to the crappie to the catfish to the bass to the other species up north. We do walleye and pike and muskies and stuff like that. The thing I would tell you is, without getting too basic, I always say the same thing. Fish really only want to do three things. They want to eat, reproduce, and not get eaten. It's just where and how they do it is the difference. I mean, that's pretty much their main drives, is to reproduce, eat, and not get eaten. So when you really look at it in those basic terms, you can figure out a lot of where they're going to be and what they're going to do. So it wasn't that big of a transition for me to go from freshwater to saltwater. And I did that on a head boat. I went out and realized there was a whole nother world, opened up an entire new environment to me that I didn't know existed, and ended up spending a bunch of time on that boat as a deckhand, and then a mate, and then ended up being a captain. I've had my 100-ton captain's license since, I think, 96. But that's something that, when you get started doing it, you just want to expand your horizons. And I mean, you can still do that. I don't care who you are. You go to Australia and you might have heard of, there's GTs down there and queenfish and coral trout, but I'm gonna tell you, there's also about 400 other fish that you're gonna either be on your phone or asking the captain what the heck that is, because it's a world, literally going to another world. So I started just like a lot of people do. I started with the family, and I started small. Grew up in a small Midwestern town, fishing in little creeks and rivers and streams, and man, whatever the heck was there is what I wanted to catch.
That's kind of the way everybody that I know of starts out. And most people can say what they want, but I don't know of anybody that didn't start out pretty much catching bluegill and stuff like that. That's how they got hooked on the sport, and that's still one of the most fun fish that you can catch.
Yes, sir. Do you think the scent of Solo Texan Adventures, do you think the scent of sunblock affects the bite at all when putting on the bait? 1,000 million billion% abso-freaking-lutely. Make sure you wash your hands. And I'm a scent guy in general. I'm not sponsored by Procure. I'm just going to tell you in advance. I have no dog in the hunt with Procure. I use that stuff religiously. I know there's times when it will completely just turn the bite on, and I can 10 to 1 somebody that's not using it. And then there's times where I don't know if it helps or not, but I use it anyway. But to answer your question, yes, you got to think about what are they looking to do? I mean, depending on the water clarity and the species and what they're able to do, they've got their lateral line, they've got their vision, they've got their hearing, they're able to sense vibrations, but they've also got a sense of taste, and they've got a sense of smell. And if you stop and think of what is your closure on that, your lateral line is going to be the vibration they're going to, first, depending on your water clarity, they're going to see it, they're going to hear it. But then when they're closing in, unless it's an attack like from a tuna where it's going to go from 100 feet to the surface and hit it in, a second and a half, it's probably not going to get a really good taste and smell of it. But then there's the rest of the world where they may very well use those last two to decide whether or not it's the real deal. You don't use cut bait because you can use a piece of sponge with nothing on it that works just as well. So at the end of the day, yes, sunblock is the antithesis of that. It is the wolfbane, the garlic around the neck of the vampire. You do not want to have that anywhere near your hands, especially if you're, down in Solo Texan Adventures with speckled trout and redfish and things like that. As soon as you're done putting your sunblock on, do your best to get it off your hands. And I've even been known to take a menhaden out of the tank and squish it in my hands and get it nice and all gooey in there so that I make sure I got that stuff off my hands.
There you go.
There you go.
That's great advice right there for somebody that wants to get the smell of that stuff off your hand. Grab
I,
up one of those jack or shad.
I don't know if you ever
I
thought
do that
about
on the boat now. I can
Absolutely.
get the baby shad going, and then I just wipe my hands off on my wife's shirt.
Yep.
Yeah, I bet
It's
you
not
do.
Same thing with Procure. You'd be amazed how that baby soft hands. Now you don't want to smell them, but I mean, as far as actual texture, I mean, you're gonna level up with some Procure on your hands. I promise you.
Oh man!
Oh man! Oh, I missed it.
Oh, we clicked on it. Got it. Okay, you go ahead.
Salt water. Doesn't the salt kill that bacteria once it's been in the water for a certain period? Kill that bacteria. In salt water, doesn't salt kill that bacteria once it's been in the water for a certain period? I'm not sure which bacteria we're talking about. Want to be outdoors.
Matt, I'm not. You're going to have to make that a little more clarification for all of us,
Maybe
Matt.
he's talking about me. Maybe I'm the bacteria and saltwater killed me a while ago.
I don't think so. Here's our good buddy Dieter Milhorn.
Maybe he was talking about the fish bacteria. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Dieter says some of y'all are going to need to Google anesthesiast. Lyle will. Well, thanks a lot, old buddy.
Antithesis. I think I used that word incorrectly. I didn't mean to be antithetical there, Dieter. Sorry about that.
Do you know Dieter, by the way?
Nope.
He lives in North Carolina. He has a huge YouTube channel, but I've known him for a long, long time. We've known each other for years and years. But Dieter films for ESPN. He runs camera. He's a cameraman for ESPN. Super nice guy. Full of crapola, but that's why him and I get around so well.
Eventually, if you hang around fishermen long enough, you'll find out that most of them are.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The only positive thing with me is I don't really have to make things up because everything I do is on video. I spend most of my life mic'd up.
Yeah, I bet that's right.
Use it correctly. Okay. I'm going to tell you, Dieter, at the end of the day, if I use something correctly, I'm going to George Costanza that thing and go out on a high note. I'm
good. Oh, mercy. But, what big shows have you got planned that you can tell us about that's coming up in this year's shows for BigWater Adventures?
The neat thing about what I do in saltwater in general and what really it drew me to it more than anything else. I mean, we've all had days that we just, thought were going to just be amazing that weren't. And we've all had situations that we just thought weren't going to pan out and they turned into something amazing. Saltwater there's so many things that can happen in saltwater to where, I might go into a shoot thinking, like if I go to the Neuse River and we're catching 50-inch bulls on popping corks. I mean, yeah, you pretty well call your shot. That's just going to be just an epic adventure. But the neat thing about what you just asked me is everywhere I go has the potential of just being insanely amazing. It just depends on two things: what decides to do what and how we get it on film, or if we get it on film. Yeah. There's often times where, if you were to ask me what the most epic moments of any past season were, I would tell you that a lot of the time I had no plans or no knowledge or no expectations that was going to happen. And a lot of times, it may be as simple as we get lucky and drop a camera down in Alaska and get a halibut eating a jig in 150 feet of water. So, where we go, I go with the best people in the world, the best destinations in the world, and the best fishermen in the world. I'm fortunate to have built a business, quite frankly, with the best co-hosts in the world with everything that they do. And they're the ones that actually make BigWater Adventures what it is, because I go in their backyard and they show me the best they got. And our job is to get it on film as best as possible every year and figure out even better ways to do it. So as far as the adventures, I mean, we're hitting, we've already been to Costa Rica, got a great inshore show and a great offshore show. we're hitting the places. We're going to Alaska. We're going to go back down to Panama. I'll spend some time in Venice, Louisiana this year. We'll be in North Carolina. We'll be all over the map. We'll be Atlantic, Pacific, Gulf of Mexico. But what we do with BigWater Adventures is we try to go, the most epic stuff we can get inshore and offshore, Atlantic, Pacific, Gulf of Mexico, and other countries.
Well, then let me rephrase my question.
Venice or Grand Isle, not for a couple of weeks.
Not for a few weeks.
Yeah, no, we hit Venice. We absolutely hit Venice. I mean, I hit Venice. Quite frankly, sometimes people tell me stop hitting Venice. This week, in fact, Kevin Beach on the Pale Horse with Mexican Gulf Fishing Company. If you tune in, it's Eastern Standard Time. But if you tune in to Outdoor Channel 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Saturday, you will see Mexican Gulf Fishing Company, Kevin Beach, and I smashing yellowfin in Venice, Louisiana on top waters this week. And that was shot, I think, June of last year, if I remember correctly.
When are you having another triple tail show? I dearly love
We'll
that.
never have another triple tail show like that one. That was
dude, that was
Captain Paul Miller is a hell of a triple tail fisherman, but even he can't put a 35-pound triple tail on film at will.
That was amazing.
It was. If you haven't seen the photos of that one, go to my Facebook, BigWater Adventures, or the website. You can go to BigWater. Easiest thing is go to BigWaterAdventures.com, and there you can find our Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. But if you go back and look, I think it was a couple of seasons ago, we had a triple tail show, and we had typical Venice. We had multiple fish over 20 pounds, but we had a showstopper. I believe it's 36 pounds, if I remember correctly. Top 5 ever caught in Louisiana, and to get that on film with a guy that lives, eats, and breathes triple tail. I mean, that's his mojo. Is you talk triple tail and he lights up. So
yeah,
that's what BigWater Adventures is all about. I mean, we get a lot of personal bests on film. Back to Alaska, we went up there last year, and the guy that owns the place, it's AlaskanFishing.com. His name is Mark Berner. He caught his personal best halibut on the show with us on an overnight trip. And that guy's been going up there. I mean, he's owned that place for a long time, and he's been going up there for, I don't even know, 30 years. And we get his biggest halibut ever, over 200 pounds, on film with him. That's the essence of BigWater Adventures, is to get that kind of stuff.
I have to tell you, Mark, and this has nothing to do with BigWater Adventures or the skin cancer stuff or anything like that, but I had a good friend of mine's wife pass away the other day. Jack's been gone for years, and I haven't seen any of his kids in a lot of time, and Jackie just retired, 30 years in the military. And he bought a house while he was stationed in Alaska, and that's where he retired. And we met them up at Diane's funeral the other day, and Jackie says, "You need to come up and go halibut fishing with me."
You do.
And he showed me some pictures, and Jackie is about my height, but the halibut's bigger than he is.
Oh yeah. We it took 3 of us to put that fish in Berner's lap, and even at that, he could only hold it for probably less than a minute. I mean, I tell you, having traveled a fair bit, there's an argument to be made that Alaska is more of another country than a lot of other countries. We typically travel a Homer spit. We'll go from Seward to Soldotna, and the reason we do that is because Seward opens to the southeast and Homer opens to the northwest. So no matter what the weather's doing, we can typically find something to if he drown. Hey, Dieter says, I always love Marsh Productions. If he drowns his cameraman, have him PM me. Dieter, there's times where I would voluntarily drown my cameraman, and we need to extend some digits to each other.
That's your friend, Lyle.
I know.
Dieter knows the deal, man. Cameras are like wine. Sometimes you love them, sometimes you hate them, but you're stuck with them regardless.
That's exactly right.
So just leaving it there. But yeah, when we go to Alaska, we'll typically, I'll put 600 miles on the rental car. That place is so huge. And if you look at it on a map, I haven't even touched, you got to zoom in to see where I even went. And the first time you go there, I mean, there's no way we can't put it on BigWater Adventures and do it justice. I mean, you drive from Anchorage to Soldotna or Anchorage to Seward or any of those places. Typically, it's going to be about a 3-hour drive. You won't make it. If you go there in the daytime, you won't make it in 6 hours because you'll be stopping and looking at mountain goats and bears in the streams and moose crossing the road in front of you. And I mean, there's 3 gas stations from Anchorage to freaking Seward. I mean, it's like I said, it's close to 3 hours. I mean, it's unfreaking believable. And every time you see the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life until you go around the next bend. Yeah. And then it resets and it resets. And I went up there, you know, I had a previous life in the fishing industry before BigWater Adventures, and I travel up to Alaska pretty much every year since about, I'd say 98, 99. And you forget. I mean, you land and get in a rental car and you just forget. I mean, you can be there a million times and you just forget. That's one of those places that you've got to go.
Yeah, I agree. It's a beautiful thing. All the pictures and the video and all the shows that I watch, whether it be on TV or on YouTube, any of them that come from that area is just amazing. And, you know, hopefully we'll get a chance to make it up there. Jackie's planning on us making it up there, so we'll see.
There's there's really nothing with all the things that have gone on in life, you know, not to get too deep in the weeds, but you know, everybody realizing their mortality to a greater or lesser degree with this COVID thing. You know, you get to a point where you really need to start looking at the things that you want to do. And I've been just blessed to be able to do what I am, to keep things straight, because this is a question I get asked all the time, is which trust fund that I draw from. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm a small business owner. My family is who does my shoot. Give me 2 seconds. I got to get this thing plugged in or it's going to.
Yes, sir. Hey, Chad.
Hey, Lyle.
Did I not tell you he was an amazing guy to have on the show?
Yeah, we should just cancel Mark's show. Keep going. He won't mind.
He's a great guy. I've known him online for years and years and years, and I've watched his shows ever since they come out. And he's a wealth of information and one of the nicest guys in our industry that you'll ever want to meet. And in my opinion, and let's face it, we've had some big guys on the show over the years, but this is the top tier.
For one, have thoroughly enjoyed all this, and I do know, you know, we said hello to everybody. We've had a ton of new people come in and stuff tonight, and some are probably wondering, what's this guy talking about Saltwater and a Catfish Weekly show? But, you know, I mean, come on. I mean,
we catch saltwater catfish. We catch gaff tops and
yeah, right? But if you missed the beginning of this, I do hope that people will go back, because it was a wealth of knowledge from the start about, you know, skincare and proper steps, and quit being so macho that we're not wearing it or getting checked out and stuff like that.
That's
which
right.
Most of us manly men like myself, maybe not that guy, but this guy, we all do, right? But it's definitely a wealth of knowledge right there to go back and check out if you missed the first part of the show. And now we'll go back to where we're talking more about the fishing, because we still have time.
Chad, for the people that didn't see this, they need to go check out Mark's Facebook page and his YouTube channel, and go check out BigWaterAdventures.org, and that's your .com.
Yeah,
and check out what he's got going on.
Trust me, don't we all?
Yeah, because he's got it going on. He's got all the cool stuff that you ever want to see on there, and he's a genuine guy, and he'll tell you how it is. So
I'll tell you too. Here's something you can do. You can go right now to motv.com, which is myoutdoortv.com. It's Outdoor Sportsman's Group's app, and you can watch all the episodes, all the seasons. You can binge watch BigWater Adventures. They got a 30-day free trial promo going right now. So if you go to motv.com, look in the upper right-hand corner and click on free trial, and you can have access not only to my show, but to every single show that's on Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, World Fishing Network, all that.
Wow.
So that's a quick way to do it.
I'm going to fix this whole show for us real quick. Mark, have you ever caught a catfish?
Oh, absolutely, man.
All right. It's a catfish show.
Are you
We can
kidding
move
me?
on. We can move on now to the other stuff.
I'm an hour and a half from Santee Cooper. Come on now. I'm
I'm
from
just making
hallowed
sure we got
ground.
that out here.
Oh yeah.
Now it's a catfish show.
That's
Well,
right.
I'll tell you what. I'll legitimize myself real quick for y'all. When I was working as a mate on the Thunderstar, if it was too rough to go offshore, this is in Shem Creek in Charleston, South Carolina, and this would have been in the early mid '90s. If it was too rough to go offshore, I would drive up to Black's Camp. This is a true story. I would drive up to Black's Camp on Santee Cooper Reservoir. A good friend of mine, Kevin Davis, owns Black's Camp, and I would work as a mate on the I'd call him legendary Joe Droz, Drose. I don't know if y'all know him, but Joe Droz pioneered a whole bunch of the catfish stuff on Santee Cooper. To tell you how far back he goes, he was actually in the Navy and was on leave when they impounded Santee Cooper for World War II. And he'd tell me things like, yeah, there's 5 hickory trees right here that we're flathead fishing on. And I'd say, how do you know that? And he said, because I used to squirrel hunt them. And I said, you hear when they impounded this thing? And he said, yeah, man, I was standing right there when they plugged it. And I said, what did you do? And he looked at me and he says, I backed up. So I've skinned, I have literally not even skinned, we fillet them. I've cleaned a bunch of catfish. You know, we used to catch those big Arkansas blues and put the big blues back, big flatheads back, and clean the channel cats. I mean, man, if it's, I got nothing but affinity for whiskered kittens. I promise you.
There we go.
That's right. You mean guy who goes up in Indiana's got to know about catfish.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely, it's what I grew up doing. So, but you know what I was telling y'all too. You know, just so people, because I get this question a lot. I just made up my mind. I worked for Shakespeare Fishing Tackle for 13 years, and I did advertising and public relations for them. And I got to know a bunch of people. Matter of fact, about 3/4 of the places and the people that I go for BigWater Adventures were on my pro staff. We had for Fluger and All-Star, we had one of the first Bass Pro staffs, along with Team Daiwa and some of the other guys. Mark Davis, Clark Winlet, Mark Menendez, Davey Height, Timmy Horton, all those guys were on my staff. So we ended up, you know, about making the only mistake you can make with a company like that is we didn't own it, and we grew it $200 million, so they sold it. When they did that, I could have stayed on board. They also bought Pure Fishing, and 2 of them merged, which is now what Pure Fishing, you know, the Pure Fishing was a conglomerate that was bought by a, you know, parent company at the time, going too far into the weeds with that. But I had the opportunity to start a television show, and that's how BigWater Adventures started. And I worked with a production company for about 5 years, and they, you know, decided that they didn't want to stay in it, and I wanted to keep it going. So I ended up buying the whole thing out, cashed in my 401k, and basically didn't take a paycheck for 5 years and lived off my wife and put everything back in it. She's a pediatric burn unit nurse, and she kept us afloat. And BigWater Adventures, you know, I wanted to put more into it. I wanted to make it bigger, better, and, you know, essentially get more viewable things, not with me, but how the underwater stuff and the things that we do, you know, trolling, you know, doing underwater trolling back when Troll Pros first came out. I mean, we had billfish coming up and eating baits, you know, 10 years ago underwater, which was kind of unheard of back then. And now, you know, everybody's able to do it. But that was really how I got started with it. And we're still, it's my wife's my business administrator. I've got a couple of cameramen that I use, and one main production guy with another, you know, that we send our overflow to, and that's it. So we're competing with the big dogs and some severely challenged resources compared to some of the production companies that are producing on Outdoor Channel.
And I love everything you do and have since the beginning, and it's just I got to tell you, you're gonna have to tell your wife thank you from me, because without her making that happen, we would never got to know Mark Davis and BigWater Adventures the way we do now.
Yeah, she's a warrior. She worked doubles. You know, I mean, I'll be straight with you. I don't think we saw each other a whole lot for about that 5-year period. And, you know, she told me, when I told her what I wanted to do, I mean, I had 20 years in the fishing industry, and I told her I wanted to cash in a 401k, and she looked me dead in the eye and said, well, if you can't bet your money on yourself, you probably shouldn't have it.
Man, that's true. That's so true.
Yeah. So, you know, and we're, I knew it'd be 5 years before anybody even knew what it was, and another 5 years before they cared. And then 5 years after that, they might decide whether they wanted to watch it or not. And we're in season 16. So I think we're on track with the business model.
Well, Betty Jean's in there, and she said nothing but love for pediatric burn unit staff.
See
She
that.
spent 4 weeks in one this year with their son, who fell in a fire and got burnt pretty bad. He's doing wonderfully now. They took really good care of him down there, and we're glad that he did. They did, but it could have go either way at any time. So all them nurses are some of the biggest heroes in the United States.
There's I catch fish, man. I mean,
that's right.
But this reality check, guys. We're fishing.
That's right.
It used to be considered a hobby, and now we're blessed to have it as a profession. And if you're not doing it full time, you're trying to do it full time, which makes it it's no longer a sport. It is a sport. It can be a profession. So, we're fortunate to be able to do what we do. But at the end of the day, I don't ever recall saving a life that didn't have a tail and scales.
That's right.
So
how many times have you? This is from Chad's wife. She wants to know how many times have you thrown your whole rod and reel in the water, or better yet, how many times have you thrown your wife's rod and reel in the water?
On purpose or on accident?
Yeah, that'd be up to you.
I'll tell you both. I've had a couple situations. If you watch real close this season on the Neuse River on those big bull reds, I turned to tell my cameraman something or other, and I'm using 50-pound braid and a 5,000 size spinning reel, but on bulls that size, and the way that they can quite frankly launch like a dragster. I had one almost take the rod and reel out of my hand. You'll see it plain as day on camera. If you watch that show, you'll see which one it was. As far as doing it on purpose, I have been known on occasion to have a temper tantrum like a 3-year-old. I don't recall throwing it specifically into the water, but I have abused some fine pin products by throwing them on the deck in disgust when I have achieved my goals. As far as losing them overboard, it's happened a couple of times, but I would say for the sake of future product shipments from Penn, it was accidental. How's that?
That's perfect, man.
That's perfect. Right there, just told me, to tell my wife that even the best professional anglers do it. I'm just getting that good.
You will never find more of a critic. If you actually watch the show, it's going to have to be something pretty amazing to see more than about 5 to 10 seconds at a time of me, because I hate the sound of my own voice. And when people say that, I used to wonder, 20 years ago, I'd hear somebody say that, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I hate the sound of my own voice. So if I'm on camera, I'm my biggest critic. It's got to be something pretty amazing. And when I make a mistake, my cameraman will start giggling, just because, it doesn't happen often that I just totally lose my mind and just have a meltdown like a 3-year-old, but it does happen.
Me neither.
I can't say that.
It's at me. It's not me getting mad at the dude in the boat, or it's me. I'm literally just disgusted with myself, and that's
where I'm at. I understand completely, and I can't deny it. It happens to me every once in a while, but it is what it is. You live your life and do the best you can and hope out everything works out.
Well, fortunately, that's another reason that I'm not saving lives, because, when I make a mistake, I broke the line, or I did something stupid, or I slipped, or I did something like that. Those back to that original conversation, there's some people that can't afford to make mistakes because the stakes are a lot higher than what we do.
That's right. You're exactly right. Mark, this has been a fast going 1 hour show, and I cannot.
No wonder my computer ran out.
I cannot thank you enough for coming on this show and being so forthright with us and educating people on how important it is with the skin cancer stuff. And please, if you guys have any questions, go to skincancer.org and check them out. They have the answers, and Mark has been gracious enough to spend so much of his time with us this evening to educate a lot of us on here. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate it. For Chad.
He's sucking up because I disowned him. So,
really?
Yeah.
We have a thing, Mark, that I'm a lot older than most of the guys on here. So I'm Dad and Chad and Mark and James
number one
Dockery, another friend of us, their sons. And then we have Matt that's trying to get adopted and different ones, But it's okay. We have a great time with our catfishing family.
Absolutely.
They have the utmost respect for each and every one that's in our group, and we appreciate it very much. And when we get someone like you to come on and help us out, it's extremely humbling that you would spend your time to do that with us. And man, I know there's no way I can ever repay you for what you have done tonight from in my perspective. But if there's anything, just let me know.
I'm going to let you know right now.
That'd be perfect.
Take so much time to get it done a second time.
Okay.
You let me know when you're ready for me to come back, and I'll be sitting right here.
My friend, that means the world to me, and we'll give it a little bit and see how everybody responds to this, because I'm sure I got plenty of questions coming in, and I'll get in touch with you. But I know it has to be a time when you're going to be in, because you're traveling a lot, and I want to make it to where we can, the next time, be a little bit more prepared about what I'm going to ask you, because I was just so overwhelmed that you was going to come in here, and I wanted you to talk about the skin stuff. Sure. And I would want you to do that again, but I'd like to spend a little bit more time next time talking to you about BigWater Adventures.
We can talk catfish. I still know where they live on Raccoon Lake in Indiana.
We can do that.
I can tell you, you go under the bridge toward Portland Mills, and it's the first set of cliffs on the left, and I can tell you where to anchor up.
Heck yeah, that works. That don't work for me. It's a little far for me, but Chad might be able to run up there.
That's one of the benefits of doing what I do is I fortunately remember about every fish I've ever caught and everywhere I've ever caught them. I don't know how, because I can't remember how to get in my truck most mornings, but it's crazy. God has a way of imprinting things on you, and there's got to be a reason for it. And look at what I do. So
absolutely, and we're so proud of what you're doing and keeping things going. It's just awesome that you're able to do it and do such a good job at it.
Appreciate that.
It's really cool, and I love watching your show, and I hope that you get a few more viewers in with it. Hang with us for just a minute. Chad, do you have a guest this week on your show?
We're 3 days out. That's too much planning for the bait shop. So
wow, but you're going to have Freddie.
Do what?
You're going to have Freddie.
I don't know. Freddie's already lost. I don't know. He lost his phone and a rod and a tackle bag, and I think his boat might have sank. I don't know.
We all playing strip poker.
It's hard telling.
Those are the first 4 things I'm going to give up.
On Panfish Nation, we're going to have Jason Persinger join us. He's a bait maker designer for plastics for bluegill, crappie, and stuff like that. He's going to join us on our show Thursday night. And then Monday night we'll be right back here with Catfish Weekly. Don't forget to stay tuned for the Catfish and Crappie podcast coming on right after us. Mark, hang tight with us. I want to thank everybody for watching tonight, and we'll see you next week on Catfish Weekly.